and gentlemen, the road to the Summoners Cup has taken us over 9,000 miles from Cologne to LA, Taipei, Singapore, Busan, and this week it's brought us to Seoul, South Korea. This bustling city will be the home for the final legs of the 2014 World Championship, and you're looking at the Olympic Gymnastics Arena where thousands of fans are converging to cheer our 4 remaining teams as they battle for the title of champions. Once again, we are going to let our broadcast partners at OGN take the lead as they kick off our weekend of action. 4 teams on this stage. 2 will be doing battle for this cup in a week's time. Here is Jun from OGN.
싱가포르 부산에 이어서 이곳은 서울, 서울 4강입니다. Finally, we are in Seoul. We're the final four. 네. 어이구, 자 이렇게 열띤 성원으로 봐주신 팬 여러분 안녕하십니까? 준결승전 세미파이널에 오신 여러분을 환영합니다. 네, 자 대만부터 와우, 대만부터 한번 신나게 달려와서 지금 한번 찍고 부산에서 이곳으로 왔습니다. 원래는 돌면서 해야 되는데 워낙 많은 무지개가 있어서 돌면서 못할 것 같네요. 자, 오늘 이제 준결승전을 펼쳐서 다음 주 상암 경기장에서 펼쳐질 결승 예오를 팀들을 가리도록 할 텐데요. 한 팀 한 팀 여러분께 소개해드리겠습니다. First up from Korea, 삼성 파이트, 삼성 블루입니다. And next from China, 로얄 클럽, 그리고 OMC입니다. 자, 이 네 개 팀들 펼치는 대결, 여러분 함께 즐기실 준비가 되셨는지? Are you ready for the semi-final? 오케이, 좋습니다. Are you ready for the final four? 오케이, 달려봅시다. Let the semi-finals begin. 지금부터 여러분의 지금 바로 함성과 함께 세미파이널은
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our continuing coverage of the 2014 World Championship. I am Trevor Quickshine Henry, and joining me on the analyst desk to break down all the action this week, once again, Mitch Crepo Forceballs from Evil Geniuses, CLG's Yiliang Double Lift Peng, OGN Costa, Christopher Monte Cristo Michaels, and from the North American LCS, David Freak Turley. Welcome back once again. Let's take a quick look at the bracket. Today we will be bringing you our first best-of-5 semi-final between sister teams Samsung Blue and Samsung White from Korea. Then tomorrow's showdown will feature Chinese team Sehorn Royal Club facing off against OMG. The seeding for both of these series was decided by a coin toss, with Samsung Blue and Sehorn Royal Club getting side selection for games 1, 3, and 5. They opted to take blue. Their opponents chose blue side for games 2 and games 4. Before we jump into the semifinals, let's take a quick look back at the quarterfinals to see how our 4 teams made it to Seoul. Incredible set of quarterfinals. And I just want to ask you guys, what sort of stands out in your mind from last weekend in Busan? Let's start with Crepo.
For me, it has to be OMG going 3-0 against Nanjing White Shield, and in the way that it going, he played so intelligently. His target switching has to have been almost the best I've seen in this entire tournament. But if you go down the roster, he wasn't the only one performing. Leveling was on point, and then they brought in their new support, Cloud, who played an immaculate Janna, and I just hope we get to see more champions from him, because as I've been told, he's been pretty good trash in LPL as well.
That's right. Yeah, for me, it's Royal. I didn't believe in them coming into quarters. I was like, they're probably going to lose to EDG. And they ended up going 3-2, making it to semis. I really like the AD carry kind of hyper carry style that they pull. It's something that obviously I've been really interested in throughout my career. And the fact that they make it work now in Season 4 is ridiculous.
I mean, Peter, you were on board the Royal hype train last year, and that kind of crashed and burned. I'm sorry, you're going to be disappointed again. Now, for me, Samsung White, like, they haven't had to show really pick and ban priorities yet, which is very interesting. We haven't seen a lot of their signature champions like Dandy's Rengar yet in the tournament. So I think they're very interesting just because I think they've been able to hide more than any other team because they've had a little bit of an easier road.
For me, the big thing this entire tournament is actually that it's not how good you are, but it's how good you play on that given day. And the quarterfinals had 3 huge standout performances for me that emulated that. Uzi on Royal Club hard carried the quarterfinal. You had Leveling on OMG, a big part of that 3-0, and also Spirit, who has stepped up massively for Samsung Blue, who's in the shadow of Dandy, of course, in the Samsung organizations, but and we're going to see him play today as well, and if he can dethrone that, that'd be a massive move here for Samsung Blue.
Yeah, I think every single team taking part in Worlds has had a moment where they've shown some weaknesses. Considering those weaknesses, you guys at home can actually re-watch any and all of the games if you head over to lolesports.com. You can watch spoiler-free on our VODs page. While you're there, you can also give a thumbs up to the teams that you think will win their respective series. Just click schedules and start voting. We will be checking in along with the analyst votes before each game. Before I ask the analysts for their opinions on today's series, I'd like to get yours. Today we're asking you which player matchup will be the deciding factor in this series and why. Tweet your thoughts to us at LOL Esports, and the analyst desk will weigh in a few of your tweets later on in the show. It is time to talk about today's knockout series between Samsung Blue versus Samsung White. White is widely considered to be the tournament favorite, but to succeed, they will have to break the curse of losing to Blue. Samsung White have never beaten Blue in a best of 5. They've met twice in Korean semifinals, each time losing 1-3 to their sister team Blue. Monty, you know them better, having casted those series. Talk to me about what happens and some of the history.
Yeah, I mean, White, formerly known as Ozone, has always been a really standout team here in Korea. And with Dade, though, I think they had a few too many kind of cooks in the kitchen. We have very aggressive shot callers in Dandy and Mata. Dade is a playmaker, Dade is a shot caller, and I think the biggest move was them swapping the mid lane in the spring season. It really galvanized Blue, allowed them to finally have a certain kind of presence in the game to really develop this team fighting style that saw great success, netting them spots in back-to-back Champions finals. So this guy has been a lot of that. And Pawn on the other side, very skilled player as we've seen, huge champion pool, but he's more reserved, more quiet. So he's more of a follower rather than a leader. And I think that helped White kind of clarify from their end as well. So just a lot of success from these two teams over this year so far, and I can't wait to see another semi between them.
Yeah, you can definitely put an argument forward, one of the most successful roster swaps, you know, in a team's history. So for Blue, as we've highlighted, stronger late game. They developed themselves into this very good team fight style team. Deft in particular, one of the cornerstones of that. Doublelift, you talk about AD carries all the time. Deft in your eyes, and what about him going up against him?
Yeah, what a surprise, actually, when I look at the stats. Deft is actually in the quarterfinals. If you look at CS differential at 10, which is how you kind of measure the early game power of these AD carries, he's down an average of 17 CS to his lane opponent. The only person, Imp, who's worse than Imp is Deft. Imp is actually number 2, second worst AD carry in the quarterfinals. So I feel like both these AD carries need to shape up their early game. The one that does kind of patch up that laning phase is probably going to have a big edge.
I mean, part of those stats, though, are going to be the fact that they have picked into losing lane matchups. We've seen a lot of twitch from these guys, so I think that affects it. But yeah, I agree, especially Deft is a bit concerning in the lane phase right now.
Yeah. I do agree with Peter here in terms of that the AD carries play have been a little wonky in laning phase, but they're definitely getting a lot of help from their supports, and that's a matchup I want to watch. I want to watch Mata play against Heart, and Heart is just more of a defensive player than Mata is. If you look even at item buys, he's the guy that has been buying all these Mikhails while you see Mata rushing Frost Queen's claim. However, Mata is just the best support in the world. I just want to see what he's going to do in this series.
Well, to touch on the Twitch point and whatnot, though, we had Uzi playing Twitch a couple of times, plus a Tristan, and still coming out quite strong. So even though we saw losing Lanestrom players, we still see a lot of these guys show up well in team fights. But to me, the matchup I really want to watch for is this jungle matchup. On the one side, you've got Samsung White's Dandy. Dandy has been the best jungler in the world for like a year and a half. He is the best jungler in this tournament by far, and let me tell you why. When Dandy kills a red buff, 40% of the time, that's the enemy's red buff he's killing. He's in your jungle all the time. His team, Samsung White, on the average game, has twice as many buffs as their opponents. That's how much Dandy counter jungles. He destroys people with his pressure. On the other side of that matchup, though, is Spirit here on Samsung Blue, for what it's worth. His team is second place behind Samsung White in buff control. That disparity is actually quite large between 1 and 2. However, if Spirit does get a lead for Samsung Blue, his team has lost exactly one game where they've had a gold lead at 20 minutes in the last like 4 months. So generally speaking, if he can make something happen here from Spirit, Blue's got a good road ahead of them, but he's fighting Dandy, which is going to be pretty hard.
Right.
Closing thoughts. If these guys get ahead, they win the game.
Sure.
Hold that thought, Monty, because we do need to get to some predictions, lock in, and remind the viewers who our analysts are predicting to win this series. Doublelift, you are first. Who is going to win, White or Blue, and why?
Like I said before, it's so hard, but I have to go with White by just a little bit because I feel like Pawn and Dandy are just the best mid-jungle duo in the world right now.
Freak, you were riding the Blue when they were ahead train quite heavily in that last segment. Who's your winner and why?
If Blue gets ahead, they would win. Problem is they're likely not to. Samsung White have been very good all tournament long. They're likely to continue that now. I think they break the curse and they win the series, probably 3-1.
Yeah, I'm going to follow you on the 3-1 vote as well. I think this series will be not as close as people think. I think White will just have the edge. They've had time to like look at Blue's mistakes and fix them, look at their own mistakes and fix them, and I think White will come out on top here.
So 3 votes for Samsung White. Monte Cristo, you've got a Samsung White tie, you've got a Samsung Blue shirt. which item of clothing are you predicting to wave around at the end of the series?
I'm going to have to go with my White tie. Now, in previous series, of course, we've seen Blue has that late game dominance, White has that early game dominance, and in their last semi, I think it was the picks and bans that went into Blue's favor. I think pick and bans are going for White's favor right here. If they can shut down Spirit's jungle picks, I think Dandy has a deeper pool, then they can avoid that kind of Blue lead at 20 minutes that Freak has been saying is so deadly, and indeed it is. And so I think they'll come out on top 3-2 for White.
Well, unanimous whitewash from the analysts. Let's check in from the fans at home. Over on lolesports.com, you guys are siding with Samsung White, 72% of the vote. Historically, you've all been wrong because Blue have won the semi-finals. We're about to find out who's going to win this one as we send it over to the caster desk to get us into game 1. Teams are very familiar with each other. And for Samsung Blue, they believe the key to victory will be using White's strengths against them.
블루팀은 저희 팀한테만 저는 세다고 생각하거든요. 다른 팀한테는 그렇게 완전 찍어 누르는 모습이 별로 없어서
저희는 아무래도 다른 팀들보다는 화이트 팀을 잘 알잖아요. 그러니까 최대한 이제 쟤네가 뭘 할 것이다 이거를 빨리 저희가 캐치를 해서 그거를 못하게 막고
대회 때랑 연습 때랑 거의 차이가 아예 없을 정도로 정말 모든 게임에 집중해서 잘하고요. 근데 또 단점이 그런 장점에 대한 단점이 하나 있는데 그 흐름을 한번 끊어주면은 맥없이 무너지는 살짝 그런 게 있어요.
다른 걸 준비해오면 어떡하지 이런 불안함과 그런 게 좀 더 크고 그리고 저희가 딱히 준비하는 전략이 있다고는 말씀드리지 못하겠는데 저희는 그냥 화이트의 스타일을 고집해 나갈 것 같아요.
One thing for sure, a lot up in the air in this match, and we're going to see what happens in just a few minutes. Hello, everyone. I'm Rivington Bism III, and joining me for our first semifinal series is Joshua Jat Leesman and Martin DeFiscio Lunga. Gentlemen, we have quite a game on our hands here today.
Yeah, and I couldn't be more hyped up for this matchup. I mean, there is so much history between these two teams, not only because they're scrimming against each other, but because they have a history of meeting in the semifinals.
And it's the two big favorites here. Before Worlds even started, everyone was looking at the Samsung teams. Could White beat Blue? Maybe they can then get the title here. I mean, we're looking at two giant teams here, two powerhouses.
Yeah. And man, is there a lot of pressure that comes along with that. And we'll see how they work through it. Let's get to the games. Rolling with a quick roster rundown. On the blue side, it will be Samsung Blue. That means it is Acorn in the top lane, Spirit in the jungle, Dade in mid, Deft at AD carry, and Hart at support.
And on the red side, it is Samsung White with many returning members to Worlds. Looper in the top lane, Dandy in the jungle, Pawn. The somewhat new guy in the mid lane, AD carries Imp, and support is Mata.
And let's be honest, guys, the Korean community, they want a team to win. But they don't just want them to win. They've said before, yeah, they'll win games. They still want a good game to come out of this. And I think that's what we're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. These two teams, they know each other really well. We've seen them play against each other before. We know Blue has been the team to win every time. But I'm not sure that's going to be the same deal right now.
It's so strange because White is so infrequently challenged that when the game does get past 35 minutes and it's somewhat close, they've shown a little bit of vulnerability, and that's what's happened in their games against Blue. So one thing we're trying to figure out is whether or not White will just pick late game champions, because inevitably that's where Blue will take it, or if Blue is afraid of the quick snowball and will pick mid game champions to get to late game. There could be so many different opportunities. We just have to wait and see.
Well, that's another thing you brought up as well, Jat, is have they been challenged? It seems like they had the easier road here. So have they had to show us everything they've got in the bag? They said they'll be kind of on the edge if Samsung Blue pulls out something different. So we'll see. Into picks and bans.
Yeah, so far the ban for Samsung Blue with the Alistar, it's been banned in 9 out of 10 games Samsung Blue has played, and they banned it every single time themselves. So that's pretty obvious. They're going to keep banning it. It means Samsung White will have extra bans open for them, but they don't have to worry about the Alistar. If they ban Zillion as well now, they keep to the trend of always banning Alistar and Zillion.
Which will give White a lot of versatility in this series. If Blue is set in their ways with their bans, they've actually switched it up a little bit here.
Okay.
They banned Ryze instead of Zillion.
Yeah, and that's a good change because people were talking about Samsung White having the edge in the champ select coming in here because Blue had seemed very predictable in their bans.
Zillion is open now.
Yeah.
They have to first pick it and put it on hard because Dade is not a Zillion player.
Not that we know of.
Nope, what we know of. Obviously, they had a bit of time to practice.
If we see Blue picking Zillion, it is 90% of the time going to hard.
And this shows me from the start, Samsung Blue, obviously Zillion is great late game as well, but he is very, very strong in the mid game, especially if you play him in the mid lane, where he has a lot of damage early on. We might see Samsung Blue try and focus a bit more on this mid lane or mid game to try and make sure White doesn't get a big lead early on and just try and snowball out of control.
And there is just so much going into this game of guesswork because White was yet to be challenged. Dandy is a legendary Rengar, but he hasn't had to bring it out at Worlds. Will he save it until this moment? We'll really get to see, maybe even in this first pick and ban phase, whether White was picking the stuff in group stage that they plan to use in semis, or if they've been saving it the whole time, and it looks like they've been saving it.
Seems like a lot has been saved, and they kind of just say, you have a Zillion, but we'll be able to kill more people than you're able to save. What does this give for Spirit now to go through the jungle? He knows Dandy's going to try to find him and make his life a living hell.
Lee Sin is open here for Spirit. His main pick, also what we normally see from Dandy being locked in, especially if you look back at, again, quarterfinals, group stage. Dandy picked Rengar over Lee Sin.
Wow.
And now we can see Lee Sin and Yasuo coming in for Samsung Blue in the next rotation. They don't have to pick the jungle yet. And that is one of the best combos together, one of the best 2v2 combos, Lee Sin and Yasuo.
And I mean, Acorn's Kayle was absolutely out of this world when he played it in Champions. It's been nerfed a little bit, so we haven't seen as much dominance, but as far as Kayle players at World, Acorn's got to be the best.
And notice what you have already. You have Kayle's ulti and Zillion's ulti. So whatever target Samsung White is jumping, double ultis to save him. And because you already have the Yasuo locked in, you can go Corki as an AD carry now, which is what Dev loves, because you don't want to have too much physical, you don't want to have too much magic. That's why Corki fits in really well with a physical mid laner. And also Lee Sin is your last pick, and then Samsung Blue has an absolutely insane lineup.
And I see a few things coming back at them from Samsung White here, however. Whenever I see a Zillion on the enemy team, I like the opponent to pick a lot of AoE damage, because Zillion, while he is good at preventing assassinations, is very poor against large amounts of damage in very chaotic team fights, because it doesn't matter if you resurrect one person when your whole team is dying. With Jace and Twitch locked in here from Samsung White, it's going to make Zillion's life a little bit harder.
It really increases that potential to just zero somebody out immediately from out of the blue. No pun intended. We'll see the Janna being picked up here by Imp. A little more safety for Looper, as we were talking about. Dade, so far, he's got nobody else to help him on that Yasuo ult. So what is Blue going to put into their composition?
I mean, already, these team compositions are so divergent from what we've already seen. We talked about these teams having a dominant road so far into the semifinals. 20-3 is their combined record when we look at these two teams. And now that they're finally against each other, they're breaking everything out.
Whoa!
Everything.
No way!
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. Varus for more Chain CC, hopeful initiation, maybe trying to bypass that Janna pick. I'm a little bit blown away that we see it at this juncture.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised, especially because Twitch can one-on-one a Varus really easily once he gets Blade completed. But you already have Kayle and Zillion to protect your AD carry, so you can pick an immobile AD carry and resurrect him in these fights here. But I wasn't expecting this pick. Maybe it's to counter the Jace poke a little bit. You have the Varus now with the long-range poke himself. And if anyone gets too close, if Rengar jumps in, what you can do is use the Varus ultimate to shoot on the team trying to follow and lock them down, and then just solo out the Rengar.
What is going on here?
Game one, mind games, if you will, gentlemen. If one of these teams wins with this composition, I'm sure it could put the other one on edge just a little bit. Not seeing this, knowing that those picks are something that could come out huge here, this is crazy.
Rip, how much were they hiding from us? Because we did extensive preparation on these picks and bans, making an A class, B class, C class for the champions we'd pick. Nowhere in there was there a Varus or an Akali for either of these teams, but here they are at semis at Worlds.
Yeah, really, really surprised. We do see the team stick to their normal kind of playstyle. We have like a full team fight come from Samsung Blue, who are extremely strong in team fights. And you have so much pick potential, like skirmish potential from Samsung White. I mean, Akali, you have the Rengar, even Jace himself can one-on-one people here, so you have such a crazy skirmish pick come from Samson White, and so much damage as well coming out just in a matter of a few seconds.
So Blue with the Save Your Life composition, Kale Zillion in there trying to make sure Dade can make the plays and have Deft on the wings, become that late game carry, hopefully. And we just see the make your life miserable attack and poke composition from White. This is going to be absolutely amazing. We'll be checking in throughout the series to see who the fans think will be coming out ahead. So keep your real-time reactions too at LOL Esports. Use the hashtag SSBWin or SSWWin. We'll be checking that as we go throughout the game. This one is going to be amazing right out of the gate, I believe. We'll see if there's even swaps to be had. These guys are about to write a new story for us here in semifinals.
And at this point, we just kind of have to reset our mind to what actually defines this matchup. Because so much of what these teams have done at Worlds thus far gets thrown out the window. However, the tendencies will remain somewhat true. If we look at the group stage, I'm going to look at Acorn in particular, because so much was made about how much damage Deft dealt and what a hyper carry he was, specifically on Twitch.
Right.
That 44% of his team's damage that he did in the group stages. In the semifinals, that fell substantially. Acorn actually did 26% of his team's damage as a top laner because they swapped their farm priorities. They kind of turned Acorn into a carry with some Rumble games. Now with Varus on Deft, that puts him in a much more supportive role from the AD carry position and puts a lot more pressure on Acorn to step up in this series. So I'm actually not expecting a lane swap unless it's initiated by White.
A lot more poke focused from Deft here. He is normally known as one of the best AD carries in terms of positioning and skill shots, which obviously is going to be very important.
He's got a lot of skill shots here.
There's a lot of skill shots to work with. So in that case, it doesn't surprise me. He's the guy picking it up. Imb is normally the more straightforward AD carry, who's also wants to make these big plays on a champion like Twitch.
Making those big plays. He feels like he's kind of lost that title as best ADC to Deft so far. Even with 2 pentakills in the tournament, he still feels like he can do better. So we'll see if he can get into that role without finding the overconfidence of last year that kind of put him on the back foot.
Yeah, and there's so much on the line in this matchup. I mean, Samson White twice now been knocked out of OGN by Samson Blue, denied the final, denied the potential of getting the title.
Yeah.
Imagine if they lose here again in the World Finals, or sorry, in the World Championship.
Right.
Getting denied going into the World Finals.
Especially after picking Akali, right? Who expected Looper to play Akali? He's known as such a laid-back and passive top laner. The fact that he's breaking out Akali here against a Kale Zillion, a lot of anti-assassination tools.
Right.
However, it's still a pretty squishy team, so he has some benefits of the Akali and some dangers of the Akali. A little bit of confusion here as far as the lane matchups initially go. Surprisingly, Deft and Hard show up in the top lane, and right away, Looper leaves.
Yeah, and with these comps here, as you just mentioned before, it's going to be a lot about Samson White getting the skirmish going in terms of the team fighting, because if they all pile on to the same target, you have the Zillion, you have the Kale, and that's going to mean Samson Blue is
early
going to
invade
fight
here.
So they have to split it up here. Let's see what happens. Samson Blue want to try and get 3 buffs, but a lot of people from Samson White, they should be able to secure it. Even Porn can join in.
This has been such a quick reaction by Mata to make it back up here. The fact that they had their 80 carry support bottom and were still able to go up and defend Dandy is huge.
Yeah, but because there's so many people from Samson White on the top side of the map, Akon could now teleport down bottom side. Imb is left alone. He's only level 2 and he was fast pushing. Normally, if you want to rotate your members around the map, you freeze the bottom lane or the top lane, wherever you have your lane swap, and your AD carry just sits back and can zone the enemy top laner. This time around, he pushed it, opened up for Akon to come down and get some good farm.
Well, we saw one way to get under Blue's skin was to take chances in the early game. Less preparation and more just gung-ho was one way to get under their skin. Right now, everything's kind of on the board, and both teams know what is to be played out. But we see White actually going for a bit of that invade. No prep wards, not a lot here as they go in.
Well, I think mainly they're trying to shut down Acorn because he was able to pick up a little bit of that farm in the bottom lane, and they want to make sure that Acorn can never get substantially stronger than Looper. Otherwise, Looper will have nowhere to farm on Akali. A lane swap to Akali that falls behind is beyond useless.
Yeah, and they also want to force Samson Blue to go to the top side of the map with Acorn, with all the members, so Dragon suddenly opens up for Samson White because they're on the bottom side. Let's see what happens in mid lane here. Spirit is wise enough to not chase into the bush with no wards.
Very safe play from Pawn. Always had trouble in lane against Dade, and Spirit wants to make sure that happens again. Can Pawn bring himself above that mid lane kind of mental block?
At this point, It's so hard for anyone to get aggressive in the mid lane just because of how much roaming is happening back and forth.
Yeah.
And the emphasis put on AD carry farm denial or top lane farm denial, I think that's actually the main thing that these teams are focusing on. But because the roam is a risk, the mid laners can't really do anything but sit back and farm. However, Pawn is a guy who loves trying to get solo kills.
Exhaust already out. Dade's going to be able to get
Are
the
you
extra
kidding?
damage. Flash is out of the left. Steal Q. Oh, man. Get some flow up. That Ignite will not take him down, but we got Summoners down in mid, and that Flash is also down for Pawn. That could be big.
When I interviewed Pawn, the one thing he kept mentioning over and over was solo killing people. Solo killed Puritan, how he solo killed Faker. I'm sure he would have loved to solo kill Dade there, but again, it was in a very Pawn style of way. He actually just countered the enemy's aggression and almost turned it around there with Jace.
There's that roam still from Mata. Dandy is in the pocket there on the backside. If anything else goes crazy, he will return to his jungle. Not to find too much. It's been taken away right now as the game, even all 5 minutes in, and both teams have tried a little trickery from both sides of the map. You see that Avarice Blade coming up for Dade in the mid lane, keeping sure that gold is up for himself on a quick back of that summoner trade.
And we see actually the ward here from Samsung Blue. I really like it inside the Dragon Pit because they knew there was a pink ward outside which couldn't spot it. And therefore they could actually go to the top side of the map, start their recalls here, and knowing Samsung White didn't actually start the Dragon yet. Because it's all about the Dragon right now for Samsung White. If Samsung Blue suddenly shows up 4 members on the top side, they might go for it anyway. Now they do get the pink.
They are assuming here that Zilean went into the top lane. Honestly, the way these teams are playing right now, it's almost like they just turned it up a notch. From every game we've seen in the group stage to now, they seem to be playing faster, they seem to be playing crazier, more unpredictable is actually the most resounding thing I'm seeing here. They're making a lot of moves that they just haven't made throughout this entire World Championship in the first game against each other.
And I like this move by Samsung Blue. They know the Dragon is going to go down because they're on the top side here. Now they want to finish this lane swap. Fast push the tower because compare top laners at the moment. Acorn is so far ahead because he got the farm in bottom lane and he's been doing the jungle camps while Looper now had to do the Dragon as well. So this is a time where you want to swap back to the one-on-one and let Acorn with the lead just bully out the Akali.
Well, he is going to be a big factor here if he can't bully out that Akali. We know that Looper can make teleport plays, and that would be even more dangerous if he can continue to assassinate and not just be a mayhem tank as he gets in the fight. Dandy being found out here. Looks like they're going to give him a little bit of trouble. You can even see Dade hovering the top side of his mid as he still has Pawn pushed back to the turret. Top and bottom turrets about to fall for both sides. And that is still going to give the lead a bit to White if they take that one down after it kills all the minions.
It is actually very impressive by White here, being the team without Zilean, yet still pulling a few of the early game advantages, as well as being the team with Twitch. One of the dangers we've seen with Blue is they have a tendency to fall behind. Almost cost them against Cloud.
Whoa! Chain of corruption flash from Daft. Blue trying to make the early game plays.
It whipped without a single summoner spell burn.
I think Acorn actually showed himself by mistake beforehand, so Samsung White knew they were around the mid lane and therefore could play very safe, stay close to the tower here and actually avoid dying, at least avoid having to use the flash he didn't actually have. So the idea was there. Sadly, Acorn actually showed himself a bit too early beforehand.
So much of ganking, especially between these two teams, is avoiding tells. Whether it's between the mid lane or whether it's a top laner playing the lane too passively while there's a gank bottom, these guys pay so much attention to everything around them. That small movement there by Acorn ended up costing Deft to kill, basically.
And they're so good at setting up these minion waves as well. Look at the top lane here. The wave was pushing down towards Samsung Blue after they killed the tower. They reset the minion wave, got slow pushing towards themselves, so Lubu could get up, get 6 minions, and now look at all these minions here for Acorn joining in. So he's gonna be so far ahead just because Samsung Blue set it up so well after killing the tower and getting him this big wave here. And Looper so far, and this Akali has been shut down.
A lot of communication pings going around to make sure they do not just walk through these wards. That Blue going over to Daft, so he can continuously use piercing arrows possibly, keep this mid lane pushed. It's going to be ADs in the mid lane now, as a lot of roaming in the early game and those turrets down have kind of just brought these teams to do something completely different than what they had planned.
The Samsung Blue tried to get Dade away from this Jace in the lane, who was bullying him quite a bit. We just constantly poke him here by sending him bottom lane. But obviously Samsung White instantly responds, go down, send Jace to the bottom lane himself.
Something we got to note is they are sister teams, but they are not identical sister teams. Very much different in their styles of play. And it's something that we're seeing here, very much so, even more different coming into this game.
These teams have been very public about saying that they are enemies of one another.
Yeah.
When group stage started in Taiwan, before that was the last time that blue and white scrimmed each other, because they've been expecting to face each other at some point in this World Championship. They know how strong one another are. They've been hiding strategies from each other. They have their own coaches. They're two separate teams in a sense when Worlds is approaching. And we're seeing how much they've been hiding from one another and actually hiding from the rest of the world right now.
So true.
And just the difference again in the picks. We talk about how we have Samsung White who wants to skirmish, who wants to get the picks, and we have Samsung Blue, the late game team fighting gods that they are. So we can see it in the comms here. Also this top lane, I like the move by Spirit. Going up to the top side, helping Akon push out the waves. And if Blue had gone in to take the farm, Spirit could have jumped him and killed him, and then he would pretty much be out of the game. He did play it safe though and stay at his tower.
Well, Pawn's in a perfect position to do a lot of poke harass here. Now about 20 CS up in that mid lane, doing really well.
That is actually a remarkable lead by Pawn over Dade. Someone who, when Blue has had their historic success against White, Dade has made it out of many laning phases against Pawn with an advantage, because Pawn wasn't able to apply any shutdown or pressure to him. But in this game in particular, especially with all the gank attempts that Blue put into the mid lane onto Pawn, to avoid that and also push Dade back again and again is really impressive. The mid-game spike of Jace, if he hits this, will be very devastating.
Around, like, what do you say, 22, 23 minutes, tier fully stacked.
I think so.
And suddenly you just become so strong. And it's fun to see how both mid laners actually got, like, comfort picks. Dade is so known for his Yasuo, probably the best Yasuo player in the world, and Jace for Pawn on the other side. One of his main picks as well. One of the few people who actually played it and really made it popular again. We've seen it model up here doing Worlds. Cool played it as well.
Known to make his own plays as well. Pretty much the only one, unless Spirit's there, which he probably will be for the fights, to activate that Yasuo ultimate. So you can see those two sticking together for safety as they clear some wards here. We do have 1 minute on to Dragon. Few prep wards have been placed on the right side here for Samsung White, and defensive wards here for Blue.
And this will be the first slightly more controlled Dragon I think that we'll see. White does have the early positioning right here. They need to be able to land a lot of poke down onto Blue and really avoid the chain of corruption in this fight. They do have an edge leading into this. Let's see if they pull off a gank before the Dragon.
Oh, here come both. Teleport down. It's going to be right on top of each other. Dade gets what he wants. He is going to be out of the fight, and he also has the intervention on. Pawn almost goes down here, but he gets the brush control. Denies the vision. Oh no, Looper gets going, and that's going to be one for Dandy as well, and White starts things off 2-0.
That's exactly the fight that White wanted to get there. They outnumbered them with the Janna roaming down a little bit earlier. The Kayle ultimate was mistimed onto Dade, and it reacts perfectly with the spawn of the Dragon. They had the ward control before then, which gave them the advantage in the fight because they knew the numbers advantage, and they turned it into a cute edge.
And you have to respect the Jace pick here early on. There was so much damage coming from him compared to what Dade could do on this Yasuo pick here. In the end, Samsung White, get the Dragon, get the picks. Pretty much perfect. Kali, who was in problems before, got a kill and an assist as well.
And he puts a Cutlass along with that Hextech Revolver in his pocket. It's going to be very big damage upgrade for him. And he's probably going to use that teleport every time it comes up now. We'll see how Samsung White kind of puts that together for the team to keep going. We see a level 9 on Pawn right now, only matched by the level 9 of Deft, who's been farming his face-off. Highest farm in the game, but Pawn is going to be a big problem.
Yeah, and we do have a Blade now completed for him here on Twitch, so he can start looking for fights for the one-on-ones. If he finds Deft right now, he should be able to kill him. Oh,
well,
now he's on a ward
there by Dade.
Oh, they're picking him.
Do too much to Imp at the moment. I really do feel like Blue is in a whole heap of trouble right now. 3,000 down at 13 minutes is unfortunately typical for Samsung Blue. While they do have some comeback history against Samsung White, in Champion Summer there was actually a game where they were down 7,000 gold at 20 minutes and still came back to win. But that is so rare, and White has also improved heavily as a team since then, with Twitch on their side this time, the late game poke of Jace, and the late game assassination potential of Akali. I don't see the same type of late game comeback happening again. Therefore, Blue needs to play exceedingly well in the next 10 minutes or so to avoid losing control of this match.
I want to agree, but I've seen Samsung White too many times be a bit over-aggressive, especially against Samsung Blue, who always managed to punish them and get back in the game anyway.
True.
So we have to see if they can control themselves, because the late game shot calling has been problem. Here's the assassination onto Def.
Oh, Def could get hit. That is going to be the Zillion ulti, but he can take out Hart as well. This is
Get
going to
away,
be some
Hart.
big
What?
damage. Hart just gives that one up, thinking Def would come up sooner, maybe?
No, what was he doing? I'm not sure if he wanted to try and get in range and exhaust onto MP and just like walk back and forth in the end. He had flash up as well.
That's what we see. Varus is vulnerable to Twitch openings, especially if he doesn't get a huge lead early. The fact they haven't made any plays with that chain of corruption is even more concerning here for Blue. White definitely trying to take a whole bunch of control here. And yes, Deficio, I agree that White has gotten overconfident, but that happens when you just stomp on everyone almost every single game.
100%.
Put the boot down one more time on this one. Alerted that Dandy is there. Red buff on him as well. Whoever gets tagged is probably going to be tagged for death. Dandy turned it out. A great heal coming from Mata to save Dandy. Another jump from Looper as he gets a kill. Can Dade and the rest of the team answer? Is there any rebuttal to these kills? Whoa. Not in range for the Yasuo. And flashes out. Somehow he lives. And they're going to take down Spirit as well. Dade throws himself in the pan, and it's way too hot to get out alive.
In between the turrets, Samsung White pulls a 3-for-0, baiting Blue into desperate plays because they know how far they're falling behind. It is just going from bad to worse.
And Looper in this one-on-one he had with Acorn in the start, he goes in, forces the ulti, then he has his stealth, he has to sustain already, and just wait for the ulti to disappear, then jump, finish off Acorn here, and Samsung White. It looked aggressive, but they were definitely in control. And look at the goal lead. We are 15 minutes in. That is insane.
Plays on plays. Let's see this one again, because it was a long fight considering.
A few things baited Blue into overextending in a sense in this fight. It's the fact that the initial initiation by Samsung White was a little bit sloppy. They missed the bullet strike, and they were in between the turrets, which for Blue, honestly, this is their opportunity to come back. This is the only time they could potentially get an edge. But Pawn rotated at the right moment. He arrived in the fight just at the right time. Dade desperately tried to get a kill, but there was a few too many shields, and it just isn't a fairly easy 3-for-0 for White.
Yeah, and just some missed plays as well. Spirit actually tried to kick Flash Imp into the tower, but he didn't manage to do it. Instead, just kicked him away. Therefore, Dade couldn't follow up in time, and in the end, they just ended up going in 1-by-1 and dying. Let's see if Luba can get away.
Pressing.
Yeah, they want to fight again.
They're oh my gosh, that damage coming out of Pawn through the shock blast. They definitely have to back off onto this one. A little bit of safety to be played now. A minute and a half on Dragon, and White controls the jungle of Blue right now, which pretty much means they aren't going to get close.
And here's the darndest thing about that Zillion pick. Actually, they don't have any vision control, so they're getting collapsed on.
Faked out teleport. So Looper will have that down.
Yeah, I want to make this point about Zillion once again, though. It's just a tier and a level 7 Zillion. So often, the Zillion pick works because a team has to invest a heavy amount into one kill that is then negated. However, if we look at the builds and champion picks on Samsung Blue right now, everyone is very squishy, and they're taking a whole bunch of AoE damage. So the investment that White has to burn to proc a Chrono Shift or a Zillion ult is very low and highly repeatable for Samsung White. So at the moment, because of this lead and the champion compositions on both sides, the Zillion is actually really ineffective. So Blue's first pick has not worked out well.
No, and that's again why we see Samsung White also in these fights here. They don't like go 5 people and tunnel on one target. They split it up very nicely here because they know they are stronger like one-on-one all across the board here. Can take the small fights and making it very hard for both Acorn and Hart to use the ultis effectively.
We talked a little bit about how to shut these teams down. It's really trying to focus Dade or getting Dandy and Mata, which almost seems like a harder task when you have 2 people that can really lead the team quite well. Right now, Pawn being quite a bit of that. As you said, 50% health. The alert onto Def, but they're going for Dade a little bit here. Dandy at least striking fear into his opponent. Spirit way too close onto this one. One last shot, but it looks like he's going to outlive this one even with the Venom on him. And it is only Imp down. Now Dade falls. It looks like they back off for now, but a lot of continuous pressure in this game.
And that is the setup you can do when you have the Yasuo and Lee Sin together. Lee Sin just goes straight for the AD carry, ults him, and then Yasuo can jump in on it with his ulti, and you can just take him down very fast. Mata wasn't there, or at least didn't save him, or couldn't save him in time.
Yeah, I still really like the way that White is approaching these team fights. They're trying to bait and switch their point of attack there.
All the time.
Dandy was so far away from the origin point of Imp's Twitch that it would have surprised and outplayed almost every other team in the world, but Blue was quick enough to react and collapse onto Imp. That's why they only got punished in a 1-for-1. However, because of the ridiculous gold lead, They still had enough pressure. That was a pre-Dragon fight.
Yep.
White does that repeatedly every time the Dragon is up. Fight before the Dragon, so the Dragon itself isn't contestable, and they pull even farther ahead.
And it's fun to see how these Samsung teams often use Twitch. It's pretty much a bait. Because you actually are going to be in the front line as the Twitch. You pop out, you use all your cooldowns. You have these 7 seconds where you are probably the best AD carry in the game because you have so much damage with ulti, Ghost Blade, everything. And the enemy team obviously wants to kill you. And when they collapse onto you, well, the remaining 4 members suddenly are in a great position to just punish and kill you.
They create such utter chaos with this composition. Looper throwing down the Shroud to go invisible. Dandy coming out from invisible along with Imp. It's kind of a flashed reaction you have to even get yourself back into the fight. They're always reacting. Very tough.
We're going to have to get an Oracle lens on Samsung Blue if they want to try and kill Looper here. You can't keep buying pink wards and playing them every single fight.
Right.
Like, that's a lot of gold invested. Rather get the 450 gold on for the Oracle lens.
And the problem is, it's not like Blue has very much gold to invest. They've been heavily denied here. I mean, 1 turret in 20 minutes, starved out of Dragon, relatively low farm numbers across the board. The Pawn versus Dade matchup is getting out of control. And they're really just hoping for catches in any way, shape, or form. But they are 1 step behind White here. And when they walk into a place with wards, they get a shock blast to the face, and they have very little way of recovering.
This could be, Imp getting out of that one beautifully. There's the teleport coming in. He goes right back onto, that's going to be Acorn, but it was one other right before he got to it. Acorn all by himself. They still go in for the fight. 1 down, now 2 down. That's going to be Dade up off the Chrono ship. But Looper wants to fight for himself. He actually draws out an exhaust. They're giving themselves so many follow-up opportunities.
At the end of the day, it's a 3-for-1. You can see how ridiculously competitive these team fights are despite the gold discrepancy, but because of the gold discrepancy is why they're going in Samsung White's favor. It's their ability to pull together in the mid-game and then just go crazy in these mid-game team fights.
Definitely not fight that are happening on the terms of Blue at this point. White is going very hard at everything now with an 10,000 gold lead as they're just about to hit 25. But it is items galore that they have finished so far, and we're going to see Looper trying to build up that Zhonya's now. The Ghost Blade finished up onto Imp, and Red Elixirs as well for Pawn for a little bit of edge on that damage.
Yeah, Samsung White, they want to close out this game with the red potion here. They already have all the walls placed down. If you look at the minimap, it is pretty much all Samsung White at the moment. So they can set up a Baron fairly early on if they want to. Don't start it, just bait it, force Samsung Blue to come in and face check you and take the fight once again, because all you want to do is have them come and fight.
An amazing amount of wards on the map right now for White. 4 counted for Blue across, and that is just so much vision White's able to use to get the fights they want, to poke from the fog of war. And it looks like they're going to be heading up towards that Baron side.
Oh, Spirit Recall on a pink ward. They know he's not going to... No, he's back in base.
Whatever they want. It's made even easier by the fact that Police Din Steal isn't even a possibility. This is the game for White that just goes completely according to plan. None of the weaknesses are exposed here for Samsung White. They're a team that generally does this to pretty much everyone. They pull ahead by a huge amount of gold by the mid-game and then end it before it gets late. Blue needs to somehow find a better way of extending the game and not getting steamrolled like this. But honestly, no one's been able to prevent White from doing this to them all worlds.
Still trying to put those resources onto Deft as we have seen before. The blue buffs go to him, the red buffs are going to him, and it's the Infinity Edge onto Varus. We don't usually see that used for his poke a lot, so he's got to get close to these fights where he's going to get assassinated, possibly just like this. If dodging out the Q, there is that wind wall, but Dade cannot force himself to pass it. He's got to back off here.
At least he stays alive here, trying to kill him, use Ghost Blade,
Having that ulti. Freedom for White is so scary for Blue, though.
That is one of the reasons Yasuo is a good pick against Twitch, because of the wind wall. You can block most of the ulti here, and Dade managed to stay alive. But Samsung White just needs to go back. 5 members once again. You have so many ways of engaging the fight. You have the Rengar, even the Twitch going in. Oh, be careful.
There it is, a very nice Yasuo ult coming in. Dade's going to fall very fast. Deft putting out a bit of damage to take down Imp, but there's so much follow-up now that there's not much they can do. 3 for 1.
White just does so much damage, it is impossible to stop this. Just throw me an ace.
1 on the Heart. Heart goes down. They even throw down the Randuins for the show. It's going to be a dead Zillion when he comes up. That's an ace, and they didn't even need him for it.
And it's just insane how, go back to the start of the game, the Akali lost a lot of farm, was behind.
Yep.
And then we have the fight in the bottom lane, which goes in favor of Samsung White. The Jace pick really paid off. Akali coming in with all her early game damage. And suddenly, 6-0-7 for Looper.
We need to actually just kind of go back in time here because this game happened so quickly. 23 minutes, And this is honestly what Blue needs to start thinking about right now.
Yeah.
What happened, and how do we prevent it from happening again? So much of it, I think, is just around Dandy's movement in the early game. He was unattacked. The lane swapping was wondrous by Samsung White. The way they were playing in between things, completely avoiding points of contention, getting him farmed up, getting Pawn ahead in the mid lane against Dade.
That was one-on-one.
Controlling Dragon. That was one-on-one. I mean, where does Blue actually go from here to try and come back? And if they almost have to completely retool their strategy.
Well, if you want to pick the same comp, you cannot take that early game fight they took. That's why they closed the bottom lane. Now they're just getting killed left and right. But the fight they took in the bottom lane was so heavily in favor of Samsung White. If they didn't take the fight, gave up the Dragon, didn't give up any kills, they could have played more passive and tried to sit back and farm, because you have great wave clear on both the Varus and the kill together. So you could have played more passive. They didn't want to fight early on.
Yeah, I mean,
That fight one more time.
They kill Imp immediately. However, in exposing themselves, they all died pretty much instantly. Looper Pawn Dandy is just an absurd amount of damage.
And both Kale and Zillion wasn't there with the ulti. That's the only defense they have against all this burst. And also the Akon just goes down without even using ulti.
You can see Hart was saying, use your intervention. I'm going to save that for myself. It doesn't matter in the end. There's just way too much damage, almost nuclear, coming out of Samsung White right now. A lot of movement in the early game, as you guys are saying, just kind of sprung this for Samsung White. The roam of Mata with Dandy. That first kill he got, those were his Moby boots. He was off and running.
They snowballed it so fast. They kept getting the fights. They went top lane between two towers.
Yeah.
Won another fight, and suddenly they were 5k gold ahead, and Samsung Blue was just way too far behind. They need to wait such a long time here, and we have a fight again.
One hit. There's the disengage
Here's
from
the
Mata.
flank. Watch Akali from the back.
Dottie's trying to find what he can. Death gets hit up. There's no peel for him. Chain of Corruption did go out, but as soon as Looper is let out of that prison, he is just knocking down the walls and finding more kills. A double for him. Another ace for Samsung White.
It's almost a 20,000 gold lead at 26 minutes. At this point, Blue has absolutely zero chance of winning this game. It's been like that for a while. The easiest ace yet. Dandy basically blew someone up by himself at the start of that fight. It started 3-5. It ended 5-0.
21-3 right now, gentlemen. 26 minutes in, a 20,000 gold lead. Absolutely crazy. Nothing we thought would come out of the board on the board in the first game, but Samsung White is making it a reality. Like you said, Jap, Blue's definitely going to have to think about game 2. A lot of comfort picks across the board for them. I'm not sure why this is happening.
Yeah. Now, at this point here, Samsung Blue, they have to try and get some global gold. They cannot just sit back anymore. Therefore, Samsung White gets a nice engage onto them. Dandy is already tanky. He has the Randu in zone, and he's so far ahead. And him just comes in. Do I manage to jump him? Flash ulti for Mata. Everyone stays alive. Beautiful. And this is what happens when you're about 20k gold ahead at 26 minutes.
Yep. Yeah. Even with the lead, though, White's still playing these fights very well and by the book. The exhausts are on Yasuo at just the right time. They're still peeling for Twitch. They're still flanking for the squishy targets on the outside of the fight. White is completely prepared and ready to go here.
Just constantly switching targets. It's beautiful to see the way to do it. Get the ulti. Okay, go. Next target. And just switch around. And the Janna pick against Yasuo Lee Sin, against double melee champions, we can say, has really showed during World Championship how strong it can be to save your AD carry.
We see now Pawn, a little bit of extra cash in the bank, putting a Essence Reaver down in his inventory as well, also with the blue buff. Why not?
Yeah, more CDR. He should be around 40% right now with all of his stuff. And so we have seen Blue being slow starters to best of 5 in the past. I mean, their first game against Cloud9 was really slow. They got steamrolled by Cloud9, but this feels a little bit different. It's almost like White is really demoralizing them here. Blue hasn't been able to find catches in pretty much any situation. Every fight they thought was positive has turned negative.
Oh my gosh!
That was scary.
Oh, I felt that one over here. Spirit tries to get out of this one. Somehow he started this fight with almost 10% HP. Looper is hit up, but he's got that Zanya's finish. Dade gets poisoned to death with an extra hit coming in from Pawn. And these guys are just putting on a clinic with this composition right now. May or may not happen in game 2, but they will definitely have momentum here as they hit the Nexus turrets. 28.5 minutes into this game. Baron's up in 30 seconds if they even want to retreat back to get it, but I think they're going to put the nail in the coffin here.
It has been an absolutely exquisite performance here by Samsung White. Nobody actually expected a 26,000 gold lead at 28 minutes in game 1 of the semifinals, but here we are.
And that's 28:50 on the clock, 24-3. Samsung White takes game 1 of this best of 5.
Yeah, and Jet, earlier today you were talking about how Samsung White against AHQ had this 19,000 goal lead in 20 minutes. We were pretty close in this game, and this is against Samsung Blue. It really shows how good Samsung White are and just snowballing the lead they do have.
It's about how good they can be as well. Even if we look at the OGN season, their amount of kills over deaths in games they won was greater than every other team in the league. It's because before 35 minutes, this team is an absolute force. It's why everyone considered them and continues to consider them the best team in the world. They just haven't been able to get that OGN championship this year. They really need to be able to win that world championship to make it all worth it. If they can actually make it without ever getting tested, oh man.
Yeah, I mean, that is scary. And for Samsung Blue in this game, because of the 2 fights in the early game where they were weaker, again, Twitch, when he gets his blade as well, is doing so much damage, they just fall too far behind. But we've seen that before, where they still came back. But this time, Samsung White, they didn't let go. They took the right team fights as well, going in like just the 20-minute mark, and never gave Samsung Blue a chance to come back.
Talking with the coaches now, actually saw Spirit as the first one up out of the seats, as we usually have, and he does just that for the team. Kind of being that Spirit, what they need to keep going, and they are going to need some momentum coming into the second game.
And they actually seem like they're in pretty good spirits, considering the absolute stomp that game was. But they know that it's a 5-game series.
Absolutely.
Right? They tried something different here. They also were probably fairly surprised by the Akali pick. Danny broke out Rengar for the first time in a long time.
Wow.
There are a lot of adjustments to make. And if past best of 5s are any example, Blue is really good at adjusting midway through a best of 5. So there's still a lot of legal edges.
If we think about it, game 1 is the game you can actually try something in, right? You can get something out of the way, but what do they do? How much do you consider now? That Akali was huge. The Jace doesn't get banned because the poke was so excessive coming into that game. There was so many things you have to focus on, or do you try to go for what you need and just kind of coordinate with the team?
So it's very hard to look at the comps in this situation and say they lost because of this pick or because they had the Akali. It was more about the fact that the lane swap actually went fine for Samsung Blue in the case. Akali got shut down in terms of farm. Acorn were very far ahead. But then they basically just picked the wrong fights in the very early game, which went in favor of Samsung White because, first of all, that's a Jace pick who was so strong. Like the first levels, like it was 7 and 9, and then once you get this more mana as well, super scary pick. And that was enough to kind of snowball the game out of control, which simply made Samsung Blue their comp never got to do anything.
And quite honestly, a lot of it had to do with the double stealth. Rengar plus Twitch always finding the right fight.
And Akali when she wants.
Or being able to turn around fights. Like Blue, post 20 minutes, turns into a completely different team, right? They're this really good animal when they get a couple turrets down on both sides and they're free to move around the map there. But honestly, in the first 20 minutes, they have a lot of vulnerabilities. Cloud9 almost exploited them, and boy, White blew them right open.
And that's something we thought was going to happen, right? That Blue would kind of try and cut and get themselves more mid-game champions to try and hit White where they are the best.
We'll see.
Didn't really work out that time. They only got 28 minutes in, and White was already taken over by then. Right now, we're going to throw it to Quickshot and our analyst to take us through Samsung White's victory.
Thank you very much, Riv. What a performance from Samsung White. Let's jump straight into it. Pull up the graphic. That will show us the 2 team compositions. We saw the Akali being pulled out. We saw Dandy on Rengar. We know why it's been banned so many times. And Deft pulling the Varus. I personally was concerned about double invincibility against single target assassins, but all fears I had have been taken away.
So the first thing I want to talk about as an AD carry player and a big Varus aficionado is I do love the Varus pick. He is actually incredibly good mid-game. This is something the casters were talking about, is getting someone who can spike a bit earlier. And this would allow his team to siege, pick fights, and try to push an advantage and you know, do good things in the mid-game here. But on the other side, though, I love the Looper Akali pick. He played Singed last week. He played Akali now. I mean, how many times do you play against Akali in competitive? How prepared could Blue possibly be for this champion? And to be honest, it showed in this game.
And just like you said about the Varus into Twitch, that's a really good matchup in lane. But it seems like Twitch is the champion that Deft and Imp have the highest proficiency on. It's actually their most played across this tournament as well. So the fact that he would give Imp his best champion means, okay, I can play this counter and I can win. Now that he's lost, what is he going to do moving forward? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I think that coming into this game, Blue expected, after not banning Zilean, to have White ban it out. But I think White really called their bluff, forcing that first pick Zilean, which allowed this very dangerous Twitch pick to go right over into White's hands. Now, this this is only Heart's third professional game ever played on Zillion, so we're not looking at a team that's very experienced with this champion. And indeed, one of the main reasons they lost in the Champion Summer Final was because the KT Arrows repeatedly picked Zillion against them, and they didn't really understand how it worked. And it was a big problem. And going to Spick and Ban Phase 2, I thought there were going to be some jungle bans, but they just let Spirit have Lee Sin. And that's how confident they are with Dandy's Rengar. Go ahead and take him up in the first round of the draft and then say, well, just throw at me whatever you've got.
In Heart's defense, though, it's incredibly hard for one to play Zillion with no main tank that you can send forward and having 3 squishies. The timing on the ulti becomes hard, and it's even harder to play Zillion in a lane swap. It messes with your tier timing. He went for the early side stone, but constantly ran out of mana, and because the game is so fast-paced, moving in between the lanes, he just doesn't bring the utility that any other support brings in terms of lane swaps. And then later, as we saw, if you fall behind, doesn't matter if you resurrect your teammates, they just get blown up again.
Well, talk to me a little bit about Samsung Blue. They were the ones that started their lane swaps quite extensively throughout the game. We saw repeated attempts to gank Pawn in the mid lane. We saw them trying to keep Looper's Akali down. It didn't work out for them. We do have a replay that I'd like to get to in just a moment or two where, Looper, he sort of got back into the game. I mean, you can see the team on stage still talking. Freak, talk me through this first blood.
Right, so the first thing to talk about is look at Mata on the minimap. This gank is pre-orchestrated. He has already left the mid lane and is roaming down with the sole purpose of joining this fight. And you'll notice by the end, Mata's here, and none of the support or AD carry from Samsung Blue do arrive. The other thing to point out is, again, this team is not ready for an Akali. There are no pink wards at all in the inventory, and the exhaust gets blown early because when do you exhaust a top laner? Almost never, except when you fight Akali. So roll the clip out, and we'll see what happens. Even though the initial gank kind of fails, he burns his W, doesn't quite get a stun early on, and in fact, Pawn gets kind of pushed around, you kick out of the ulti. The exhaust is poorly timed, it's kind of wasted because he's stunned during it, but there's the Kayle ult burn, there's a lot more burned, and finally the TP comes in. Looper gets to stealth up, and even though the entirety of Samsung White are down below half HP, they can constantly juggle aggro. There's a knock-up in the exhaust from Mata and the shield to increase the damage. Again, pre-orchestrated gank, very well played, guaranteed 4v3, plus a couple of misplays.
So early game definitely going in the favor of Samsung White. From there on out, they really just accelerated their lead. I want to pull a second replay up quickly before we start to discuss some of the bigger, series impacting decisions. Crepo, talk me through this play.
So yeah, what I want to highlight in this replay is basically how smart these teams are and how good at their champions. Even in a lot of trades, they will do something a little bit more than other teams. So what's going to happen in this replay is they're going to flank in and they're going to aim for the kill, but immediately they notice that there's 2 people flanking them from the downside area, so they'll turn down instead of up. Then they realize they're overextended. Then Mata comes in with a beautiful Janna ulti, and instead of fleeing, they basically use Acorn as an escape vessel. We can roll the clip and you'll see what I mean. Basically, they're coming in, they're like, okay, we're ignoring Acorn, we're going on Spirit and Dada here. They realize they're overextended, Mata stays behind them, positions himself right in the middle of the lane, and in the meanwhile, basically, Acorn gets pulled up, Looper jumps to Acorn, they split to the side, and then they go for the pincer once their mid laner joins them.
And just keep watching Dandy. He hits so many bolas over the course of this fight. I mean, he just stopped Spirit dead in its tracks coming in alongside of Mata using that Monsoon as a peeling device.
And the only, the biggest play in this replay is actually a mistake. Spirit goes for the flash kick, and he doesn't want to get the kick flash off. He just wants to flash kick into Yasuo ulti immediately, but his mid laner wasn't ready for it. The plan fails, and once you miss that combo, it gets brutal.
Doublelift, I have to ask you, what does Samsung do in this game? The rest of this matchup really was just all about White cleaning up. They had a massive lead. They punished Blue over and over and over. How do you come back from a 28-game smash? I mean, there's the team on your screen. They're deep in.
There is so many variables that they put in to account, but I do think this is just my own personal opinion. So Royal Club versus EDG, Janna was 3-0 in that series. OMG versus Najin Shield, Janna was 3-0 in that series. I don't know why people are still leaving Janna up so late in the draft and still picking champions like Lee Sin and Yasuo into it. Honestly, I think right now Janna's the best support in the game, and it seems really strange that the people just keep underestimating her.
I actually got a really cool stat from that earlier when I was looking up whether Morgana was being played a lot. Actually, our stats guy came hey, but you should really look at Janna because she's been picked now 38 times, won 24 times, and only lost 14. That's by far the biggest discrepancy in win-losses and the highest pick rate. I don't know why teams are just not picking Janna early.
Exactly.
Doesn't make sense.
People are slow to adapt. I mean, right, Akali came out new, John was new to the tournament, and you've got to take some time to realize Sometimes the power's not what you expect it to
We've
be.
had 37 picks.
Yeah, and Mata, though, you really have to commend his Janna play in that game because he saved Imp in a lot of situations and allowed Imp to just remove Yasuo. We didn't have a replay of it, but that last fight when he flashed right on top of Imp to monsoon Yasuo away was just a beautiful play. And man, Mata is really coming up clutch here.
Well, let's just get one last closing thought from the AD carry player. The Varus pick, I don't think I saw Chain of Corruption connect. Obviously, it was too far behind for it really to matter.
Yeah.
If it did, is that a pick you expect to see again?
Absolutely not. Oh my god. I really want to see... I always say this. Def should just play Corki into Twitch. That is his best matchup. His Corki is the best Corki I've ever seen in my life.
Well, closing thoughts, Freak.
Yeah, I actually do think Varus can work. Specifically, I think it was like this whole planned thing. Twitch opens up when someone gets Varus ulted, the target gets revived, and then they just kill Twitch. And like, great, we're good. But obviously didn't pay out, but I think that was the thought process.
Janna is the counter.
Yeah, there's also difficulty. You've got Rengar and Akali to deal with that as well. But anyways, guys, we do have to take a quick break, reset for game 2. As we go, the Samsung teams are very close and have a friendship that has made both teams better. But as we've just seen, neither team will be pulling their punches on the Rift.
일단 삼성 화이트와 저희 팀은 되게 친해요.
합숙은 같이 해요. 네, 방만 다르게 하고 이제 한국 대회에서는 이제 최고의 라이벌이라 불릴 정도로. 근데 또 저희 팀 내적으로만 보면은 그렇게 막 라이벌 관계가 아니고 약간 친구 같은 그런 팀원들이거든요.
저희 쪽이 형들이 많으니까 저희 쪽이 큰 형으로 할게요.
큰 형, 작은 형. 좀 쌍둥이로 치자면은 네, 저희가 좀 일찍 태어났을 뿐인 것 같아요.
화이트 팀이 저희 형제 팀이란 게 정말 저희한테는 큰 축복이었던 것 같아요. 저희 팀 자체가 일단 성적이 많이 안 좋은 팀이었는데 화이트 팀과 많이 연습하고 또 배우고 그런 것 때문에 이제 저희가 많이 이렇게 성장할 수 있었던 것 같아요.
다대가 저희 팀에 있었던 게 아마 충분히 도움이 될 거라 생각해요. 저희 팀의 전반적인 오도도 다대가 담당했었고 이제 저희 팀의 부족한 부분을 많이 겪다가 나간 선수니까 아마 그만큼 저희 팀을 잘 알고 있지 않을까 생각해요.
그 팀원들과 친하지만 화이트 팀원들과 친하지만 대회에선 그런 게 없기 때문에 그냥 팀과 팀이고.
제가 다대형 입장이라면 정말 화이트 팀은 꼭 항상 깨부셔야 될 상대로 이렇게 기억할 것 같아요. 목숨을 걸고 꼭 부셔줘야 되지 않나.
평소에는 또 대회 없을 때는 친하게 지내는데 또 토너먼트에서 만나면 좀 뭔가 보이지 않는 벽이 이제 좀 생기더라고요. 지금은 좀 그런 시기인 것 같아요.
그냥 서로 연습만 하고 잘 안 마시는 것 같아요.
이번이 4강에서는 3시즌 연속 만나게 되는, 게다가 롤드컵 4강이라는 대회인데 이번에는 좀 지면은 좀 타격일 것 같은데요.